welcome to the Inside Track on Real Estate with the Dekker Team. And today we have a returning guest. So depending on what order you're listening to the shows, you may not find he's a returning guest, but just know there's more than one show to check out with Dan. And Dan is from HCE Inspections.
HCE Inspections.
Yes, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Nice to have you
again. Yeah.
So obviously we learned a lot the first time, otherwise we wouldn't have invited him back. So tell us just a little tiny bit about your company.
Okay.
So that people have a general sense of what we're talking about, and then we'll get right into what we need to educate people on today.
Super. Well, my company is called HCE Inspection Services, and HCE stands for Home, Commercial, and Engineering Inspection. So first and foremost, I'm a home inspector. I also do commercial building inspections, and the engineering inspections pertains to several things. Safety inspections for commercial industrial equipment. Some people refer to them as pre-start health and safety reviews. We also do elevator assessments, structural assessments, environmental assessments, and HVAC diagnostic tests.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about home inspection, the basics. Let's just sort of start at the basics. We'll go through all the different types of inspections that you do. Mm-hmm. And so tell me what the basics are. Of a residential home inspection.
The basics of a home inspection, well, there's 8 elements of a home inspection. So we check out your roof, we check out your structure, your interior and your exterior, your heating, your cooling, your electrical, and your plumbing. And everything is a visual examination of the home. We don't do anything that's invasive or destructive, so everything is kind of an outside look of what's going on. Some home inspectors use the benchmark. If I have to use a tool to open it, they won't open that. I think you occasionally most home inspectors.
We've opened some things, haven't we? I've opened things with you.
Yeah, no,
to
absolutely.
See what's behind that.
And most home inspectors will go the extra mile. Some will go on the roof. Some will.
What will you do?
I'm on the side of doing more. If there's a roof I can get on, I will get on it. If there's a panel I can open with whatever screwdrivers I have, I will open it. I feel that it's part of the service for the prospective buyer is to see things that they don't get to see, and to understand things that just taking a walk through the house that they won't understand. So I also have several tools that I bring. I bring an infrared camera, and that helps people see a little bit through the wall, and that picks up thermal properties, so you can see moisture detection more than anything. And you can also see a few places where air is escaping through the house, and that's really just an opportunity to improve, through the windows, or if there's a lot of air escaping through the door, or seals and cracks and things like that. I also bring some moisture detection equipment, and that is just pinpoint moisture, so I'm basically probing the walls and things like that, as well as checking relative humidity in the overall home. And this varies. It's a little difficult because, especially if we come in the morning, the homeowner has left, they've had a shower, they filled the house up with moisture. I might get there and my readings are off the chart, but that's all part of it. We need to, I'm trying to understand what is going on a relative basis. So giving people insight onto that.
Right.
So there's 4 different types of home inspection. I just call these. There's a lot of different categories for home inspection, so you can say there's 10. But
there's really 4 basics.
I like to sum them up into 4.
Let's go. And then we'll talk about the variations a little bit so that people don't get too confused.
Exactly.
So let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the things you'll hear from most home inspectors is called a pre-listing inspection. And really, the term pre-listing kind of refers to before it is up for sale. But for me, it's really just the seller's inspection. So a seller is going ahead and getting inspection on their home to understand it. Maybe they haven't lived in it a long time. Maybe they've lived in it for a long time, but they don't know anything about homes. So they're really trying to be proactive and check things out ahead of time and have that report for buyers.
Well, and it allows them to potentially do some things in advance.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
If they're willing to do additional work, then maybe it would be worthwhile to find out what's there that they don't know is there.
Stuff that isn't very expensive, but is going to save the hassle. All those little things that come up in between a negotiation. If there's things that you can do ahead of time, That's a
Right.
great opportunity.
Right. So they're not all that common yet in our
no,
marketplace,
no.
and I think there's some pros and cons to them. We've chatted a little bit about that off air.
Yes.
And some of the
Yes.
pros, I guess, is the pro is definitely that you've got an insight into your house, maybe more than you would have had. So if you're really handy and you've been maintaining it beautifully and you've got great records, it may not be that valuable to you.
No, and I will say that, and you're absolutely right. It's not very common. One of the advantages is to know some things up front, and and possibly show a little bit of transparency to the prospective buyer, showing you're honest. You want people to know about your home, but the disadvantage is, truthfully, it's very rare that a buyer won't want their own home inspection done anyway.
It's not like it. Yeah. So it's an education more than anything.
Absolutely.
An education for the seller.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the pre.
That's the pre.
And that could be done at any point, a year before you were considering selling or just before. It's just one of those things to give an objective eye to what's going on in your home systems, really.
Right.
That's the purpose of it.
Right.
Okay, perfect. And then there's what you call the post-purchase.
The post-purchase. And just like we were talking, as in the pre-listing is just really the seller's inspection. The post-purchase is really just the buyer's inspection. And it happens at different points.
Right.
It happens sometimes totally after the entire purchase is done and everything is signed. But it also happens as sometimes more normally as a condition of the sale. So you've made an offer, they've accepted your offer, and now you need a home inspection done. You may also need financing, yada, yada, yada. And that's where most of my business.
Right. And then sometimes it's actually done prior to putting the offer in.
Exactly.
So it's still, we call it post-purchase, but really it's not. It's a buyer's inspection done to prepare them to put an offer in.
Exactly.
And where we might do that is in the case of where you're anticipating multiple offers on a property and you want to go in with a clean offer, meaning not conditional on inspection, and maybe there's a 3 or 4 or 5 or even 8 day window where no offers are accepted until a certain day. If you're pretty sure you want to put an offer in, it's prudent to go ahead and get that home buyer's inspection done, and then you can go in knowing what you're putting an offer in on, because you're probably not going to have the luxury of doing it as a condition if you want the house.
Yeah, and probably the most ideal situation when you can do that. Then everything is up front, and then you're talking money. And
you would only do that in the case where you thought there'd be more than one offer, because otherwise why spend the money on a home you may not come to grips with on price. You may not come to terms. So
you may,
there's pros and cons to every type. However, those would all be buyer inspections.
Yeah, and so we're talking buyer inspections, things that we look for a buyer. So home inspections are always the same in what they're looking for. How these ones differ are a little bit. So what I usually tell people when I first see them is that if I have the whole day here, I will find 100 things wrong with this home.
At least.
If you give me the whole day, I will just pick it apart. But for the 2 hours that typically run for a home inspection, 2 to 3 hours, I'll find about 20,
depending on the house.
smaller houses. We'll only find about 20 to 25 things. So what I want to do is find the things that are important to you. What are the most important concerns you have about it? So if you're not concerned about the roof, it's new, we'll spend a little bit of time. I'll just may look at it and find
Make sure it's fine. The flashing's okay.
But I won't
there's no leaks.
yammer on about the roof for 30 minutes for you. I will go through the things that are important. If the entire basement is finished, you, regardless of what you can see, you don't know anything that's going on behind the walls, so I might spend some time trying to evaluate it for you. And try to do the things that are important for the buyer. And that's what's the most important. If anything, a home inspection is your real opportunity to see the home before you make your big move. You're not going to get another opportunity on this level. You're spending the time with a professional, somebody who knows about residential properties. Home inspectors are very diverse. Come from all sorts of different places.
They do. That's why you were on the show, Dan.
Yes. And you can get lots of different types of home inspectors because all of those backgrounds give a lot of different information. Some are specialists in HVAC and have become home inspectors. Well, you're going to get a lot of information about a heating, ventilation, and cooling system. So, maybe that's a good way to find your home inspector, is to evaluate their backgrounds a little bit. I'm more of a generalist. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm a mechanical engineer. So the thing I know a lot about is systems. I know a lot about electrical systems, a lot about plumbing, HVAC systems. And these are the things that I'm going to be really, and ventilation systems, I understand, mold and how to divert water and things like that. So, when we're talking post-purchase inspections, that's what you want to do to find the right home inspector for you.
Right.
So to kind of jump a little bit, the next one that I think of when I talk about home inspections is commercial inspections. Now, commercial inspections can be defined a few different ways. The way that I define it the most cleanly is that a commercial inspection is anything that's been zoned commercially. So it could just be a home that's a small place that's doing a little bit of business. It could be a condo apartment that's just doing commercial business, and it's basically somewhere where people aren't living. Unless it is somebody owns a large unit with 6 or 7 units in it, and that is their commercial property, and they might be buying and selling it. So there might be, how that differs is the person who's renting might have a home inspection on their apartment, but the person who owns the building would have a commercial inspection done. And it's not that they're looking for different things, it's that there's more to a commercial inspection because it's under a higher scrutiny. So if you're renting out a large unit, so you have 6 properties or even a large apartment building, you have a lot more code things that you need to...
Now we're talking more about code, whereas a residential inspection is primarily not a code inspection. I mean, you are looking for safety issues in a regular residential, right? GFIs and, ground fault interrupter, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Smoke detectors and, those things from a safety perspective. However, you're not really looking for code. You're looking for structural integrity and soundness and usability and functionality and that stuff, right?
Exactly. Making sure, regardless of how it relates to code, we're trying to find out how it's performing.
Right.
So even if you put plastic up on your roof or whatever you want to do, as long as it's shedding water, well, it's doing great. But
it might be an extreme case, but okay. Let's have some fun with it. So on commercial, though, you are more concerned about code.
Well, the inspection is not necessarily different. You're still looking for performance. You're still looking for and you may have, so commercial inspection is a little more in depth, so I find people are looking a little bit more about what code is going to apply to things like fire safety. So there's a couple of different inspections that go with commercial. So you're going to find a fire and safety inspection with commercial property. A lot of these things are not specifically required, but they're going to be asked from insurance providers and mortgage people and lenders and things like that. So you might be told to do a fire inspection. Sometimes it was done, a year ago by the previous owner, and you don't have to do it, which is great. Environmental inspections are also one. You might hear the term Phase 1, Phase 2 environmental inspections. Those are very common. Typically, find those on properties over $500,000. But it varies. Like I said, it's really just the lender or the insurance provider.
It's not so much the price point as it is the use.
Exactly. So you do run into those things, and one of the things that since we're talking code, one of the things you'll run into are municipal code checks, and these aren't necessarily inspections. They are paper inspections done in the background, sometimes by the lawyer or sometimes by the city, and that's just a check to see if there's any existing code violations that the city knows about that are basically getting transferred over to you. They don't know that it's been fixed, or if maybe it has been fixed but nobody's told them. So it's doing a background check on the property. So that's how commercial differs, although, you obviously commercial property, we're also talking restaurants, we're talking anything industrial, it varies. So it's not necessarily somebody who's living in the property. It can be, that can be a commercial property, but anything that is zoned commercially is how I like to define it. So the last type of home inspection that I classify home inspections are new build inspections. Right. And I classify this differently because there is something you must understand when you're doing new build inspections. And if you need to find if you have a new build, and a new build is anything less than 7 years old, whether you're buying it right out of the gate from a builder, or you're buying it, then it's less than 7 years old, because you're transferring over, in some cases, you're transferring over a warranty from Terrion.
So sometimes that new build inspection would be tied into a buyer's purchase inspection? Because if I'm buying a house that's 5 years old,
Right.
I'm looking at it from a buyer's perspective. I'm looking at a buyer's inspection, and it also merits the components of a new home inspection.
It does. It does. If it's 5 years, so it's more importantly if it's 2 years and less.
Okay.
Between 2 and 7, it's a little less important because I should probably explain what Tarion is. Tarion is essentially it is the kind of a watchdog to watch over builders and homes and new build homes that they're making sure they're done properly. And if there's something that's done incorrectly or if it's not performing, then they kind of step in and help to mediate that process. There's a lot we can talk about with Tarion, but what I want people to understand is, so there's 4 different types of new build inspections. There's the pre-delivery inspection. That is if you buy a brand new home from a builder, and it's done between you and the builder themselves. And that's your walkthrough of all of the systems, making sure, noting all the things that haven't been done yet, because a lot of times you'll buy a home and there's things that aren't been built that are supposed to be built, but you're moving in anyway. You note all those things. At that time, you may bring in a home inspector as your representative or designate. You walk through together, or the home inspector walks through for you. And that person is just there not to get in the way, but to do an additional inspection to make sure that all the things that they've caught and all the things the builder has caught. Because as you said, if you have 2 hours or a whole day, I'll find 75 things or 25 things. So it gives you that extra little bit.
Well, and the builder is also looking at it from their perspective. They're not looking at it from the buyer's perspective.
Exactly. They're not there maliciously, not trying to.
No,
they're trying to, because they know there's going to be continuous inspections over the first 2 years, so they want to catch these things too.
Yeah, they do.
And a lot of builders will use an outside third-party home inspection company to do that pre-delivery for them, just to make sure that these things are done separately, autonomously, and so. That's the pre-delivery inspection. The next one is done at the 30-day point, and you have to do an inspection within the first 30 days. And this is you've moved in, you've now seen the home, you've done it, you've seen, now there's a few things that you didn't notice on the pre-delivery inspection.
Things that have shown up since.
Things that have shown up since. Houses move and they creep, and they won't move necessarily that quickly, but
they do start to shimmy though.
Absolutely. And so you will see different things between 0 and 30 days. So you do another one there, and typically that is when I will find the most home inspections. At the 30-day point, you don't necessarily get them at the pre-delivery, so you don't necessarily call me at the pre-delivery. That's your choice. But at the 30-day, it's either you or the builder won't come for that inspection, so you want to be there for that one. Sometimes the builder comes back so the next one is the 1 year, and that's done in the last 30 days of the first year that you own your home. And I'll just lump in that there's one done at the last 30 days of 1 year, and then there's one at the last 30 days of the second year as well. Yeah. You're looking for different things at each one of these inspections because as time goes on, you lose more and more warranty items. In the first year, most of them are all the same. It's workmanship and things like that. And that's where you get the most, we'll call it bang for your buck, because there's the most things that are covered. After your first year, you lose a lot, and then it's mostly larger items, water infiltration. A lot of people are, they find they're disappointed when they see some dampness on the concrete of their basement in the first year, and they think it's going to be covered, when in fact it's not. It's leaks through the walls that are, if you can define it as a crack in the wall and it's pouring through, then that's covered. But if it's just like wicking up through the cement, that's not going to be covered.
No, that's more of a management thing.
That's water, right?
So if you're just joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate, we have been talking with Dan about home inspections, and specifically the 4 types of home inspections: pre-inspections, post-inspections, really seller inspections and buyer inspections is the other way to say those, commercial inspections, as well as new build inspections. If you want to catch some more details and just an overview of each of those, go on back to the first part of the show, and we're just going to continue chatting about that probably for the next few minutes, and then wrap up by talking about a great property that's just come on the market that, well, has already had a pre-inspection, but may still, as a buyer, you're probably going to want to have one anyway.
Yep.
So that's just typically how it works. So let's switch gears a little bit, Dan, and let's talk about those things that we want to look for. A homeowner prospective buyer might want to look for when they're going to just take a look at a home.
Okay.
Prior to going to the inspection. So before they even call you, what are those top things that we just want to be aware of as we're walking through, that we can do at a quick glance with our realtor, and we can kind of have a quick chat about those, so that when we call you to actually do the buyer inspection after we've purchased it, we're just confirming most of what we already know.
Right, and the top 10 things that I like to tell people to look for are, the first one is, it takes a little bit of practice, but discoloration on the roof. Okay. And this is really an element that you can see what the roof does from year to year. So give you an example, if it snows unevenly on the roof, or you've got heat coming up through the roof, you can see that the sun wears down areas in different spots. So you can kind of get an idea of what's going on the roof very quickly, from just seeing a little bit of discoloration. It takes some practice, but it's a really good way to just kind of say, okay, what is this going to do?
Well, if you see it, you at least know that there's something worth talking to your building inspector about.
Exactly, and say, what's going on here? Okay. The second and probably the most important, the thing
one that freaks out people more than anything else, right?
Is a sort of a musty odor, and I usually say a musty odor in the basement, because that's where you're likely going to find it.
Yeah, sometimes you find it at the front door already, though. It greets you the second you walk in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good moment. So as soon as you walk into the basement, that first moment that you breathe in, you can tell there's a little bit. It's almost, if it's really bad, it's almost a bit of an ammonia smell. But in more cases, just kind of musty sort of basement smell. And you can say, okay, there's some dampness here.
We got to find it.
Got to find it. Lots of different levels. Doesn't mean the house is terrible, but that's something to definitely bring up with your home inspector when you get the chance. Yep. The third thing is, and a lot of people just discount this because it's easy, but it's cleanliness and disrepair. I walk in. Oh, absolutely, you can fix it. You see carpet ripped, or lots of things, like drywall cracks, and not cracks from structural, but cracks from just knocking in.
So I had some of those in my house.
Sure.
We found some funny holes.
That's definitely a telling sign of how the house is maintained.
Right.
Absolutely, it can all be fixed, and you're the person to fix it, but you know that you're going to be dealing with things.
And I think I often will say to people, really do pay attention to those things. It's not so much about the cleanliness itself. It's just, if we didn't pay attention to the maintenance that maybe should have been done 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if we haven't been doing that, what has that led to?
Yep.
And what more will you find that you didn't anticipate finding behind the scenes, so to speak?
Exactly.
And so it's really just it's important. And a home that has been maintained meticulously, even if it's never been updated, even if it's original cushion flooring, original bathrooms, original cabinets, it's original.
Yep.
If it's been maintained meticulously, it will actually sell for more money than a home that is equally as dated, just not loved and maintained meticulously. And that's because there's less issues.
Yep. Did they care, or did they not care about it?
And what impact does that have on the structure of the house at this point?
Exactly.
Lots.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so number 4.
Stains on the ceiling, which everybody can relate to, but those are evidence of what's going on behind it. Leaky pipes, or heavy condensation in the home can lead to all sorts of different problems. You're really just trying to figure out what you may need to fix, or what's going on. A lot of the time it's just stains, and if you probe it, it's actually dry.
Yeah.
But you see them and you say, okay, at some point that might be an issue.
So we need to find out what the issue was, and attempt to see what we can mitigate and stuff. Yeah.
One of the things, just in my terminology, is handyman wiring. And everybody can kind of understand this. Everybody, it's expensive to get an electrician in, and people want to do their own wiring. Very few people do it well, and it's quite easy to see, especially if it's it's there. It's not behind a wall. I can always tell if there wasn't a professional that it was done. So just fire hazards. Don't mess around with wiring. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Don't. Yeah, it's pretty easy.
And I know your favorite pet peeve of all, because it's my favorite pet peeve too.
Water diverting.
Exactly.
It's a huge category, and we're talking How does the roof shed water? How are the gutters and the downspouts diverted away from the house? And how does the grading work so that when it's just natural rain off the walls diverts away from the house? Most important thing. And people don't realize that it's the most important thing.
One of my favorites is the downspout that we don't want to run across the roof line because it looks ugly. Absolutely. Except now we prematurely, probably by 4 or 5 years often, wear out a chunk of the shingle because we have water from a higher roof section dumping onto a lower roof section, and they're just completely wrecked and everything else looks awesome and beautiful. And if we had just spent the $40, and who cares that you've got a piece of eaves troughing running across your roof? Match the color of shingle if you want. Don't if you don't want. Like, it's such a minor inconvenience or unsightly thing to save years and years of premature shingle disrepair. So that's a water thing that's a fun thing to look for. I love that one because it's almost never done. So you kind of brought value to the table so quickly, right?
It's on my report every single time.
Exactly.
So there's two things involved here. One thing to look for is in HVAC. First one is you're looking for your age. They don't last as long as you think they will. The older ones.
The heating system?
The heating
Is that
system.
what you mean by H?
Exactly.
People might not know what H is.
Yeah. No, the well, life expectancies are less than you want them to be. So you want to know how old they are. If it's not on the initial report, find out what they are. It's important. Anything over 10 years is something that is nearing the end of its world.
Especially the newer ones. They're just not making them to last as long anymore.
No,
that's just reality. Because I'm seeing 25-year-old stuff in great shape and 9-year-old stuff that's coming to the end. Confusion.
Exactly. Another thing you want to keep involved is in your HVAC system. You want to make sure it's maintained every year, and you can easily see this a lot of the time from the record that's on the HVAC system. There's just usually a big sticker from a heating company that will tell you when it's maintained. They don't always update those records.
No, they don't.
So if you do see an infrequent number, it doesn't mean that it wasn't updated. No. They don't always write that in place. So just giving people look, just ask the question.
Yep, absolutely.
Another one that's very common is their aluminum wiring. And we won't go into aluminum wiring of detail. It can sometimes be a safety hazard. Not always, and it's not always a problem. It's a very complicated.
If it's cared for properly, it's really not an issue.
Exactly.
And so it's really it's done right.
It's something you want your inspector to look at and make sure that they're finding for you. And the last thing that I like to tell people about is windows. And there's a couple of things that we can talk about with windows. You understand that there's certain materials do different things, and with the newest windows tend to be PVC or a plastic material. Before that, there was a lot of metal windows, and it's not that they don't sell metal windows now, but they're evolving in a certain direction. So wood is first, metal is second, and plastic is now, and each of those things tend to show that there are benefits as you go along. So, and I just say it in order because we can go on and on about those things.
We could spend days talking about windows, and we have had a window specialist on the show. So if you want to catch a lot of details on windows, that's where you would go to get those details, or have a home inspection, and then Dan can teach you everything he knows, or go on his website at hceinspect.com, and there's lots of questions and answers to your questions there. And just thanks for joining us on the Inside Track on Real Estate. And just want to give you a little bit of an insight into a great property in Canada. It is $475,000, an amazing 4-bedroom home, lots of bright light, lots of natural light coming into the home through large windows, lots of wood flooring, upgraded backsplashes, and really beautiful ornate fireplace, fully finished lower level, gorgeous sunken bedroom area, so the bedroom suite feels awesome upstairs. So just a whole lot to offer for $475,000. It is really an amazing value. So if that property interests you at all, give us a call at the Dekker Team at 613-860-4663, 613-860-4663, or for any property anywhere for that matter. Or if you're thinking about selling a home this year, give us a call as well, and we can help you there, or check us out at dekkerteam.com. That's Dekker with double K. And thanks for joining us on the Inside Track. And Dan, thanks for joining us as well. It's been awesome to have you on the show yet again. Thanks
for having me.
And you never know. If you demand, we'll have them back again. Tell us what you want to know about inspections, and we will continue to cover that topic. Thanks for joining us today, and thank you very much. We'll catch you next time.
what you wanna do. My man, it's on you.